Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel HK Unique Vault, and this channel is made for you to give the information about the world history, cultures and the biographies of the famous persons. So in last video I have talked about the ancient history of the Mesoamericans, and now today I would like to talk about the South American history. And the history was began by a great ancient civilization. It was called the Andean civilization, especially for the Andes ranges here. It is the Andes mountain, which on average almost it has more peaks, which the peaks were about 20,000 feet height. It is the second largest highest peaks in after the Himalayas in South America. So how the South American culture actually began? It was actually began by the Chavin culture. And Chavin culture was actually began 3600 BC, and it was lasting for near about 1800 to near about 600 BC. So it was passing a long times in the central area of Peru, and also in the southern part, and also the northern parts. Another culture was also established. The Chavin culture was actually called the mother of culture in the South America, especially in the Peru peoples. The originals, originally, or the Aboriginals people were established great civilizations, but it's a big surprise that they didn't actually establish their civilization in the coastal areas rather than to the mountainous areas, since the Andes areas are very steep and rocky. It's quite impossible for any human beings to establish a great civilization in that environment. But the rivers and the oceans were very close to them. So later, in the mountain areas, they established a big civilization. It's called the Chavin civilization. And the Chavin culture were mixed of the different cultures, and there were first the hunter gatherers. Later they established in 1800 BC to establish the farm, and later they were accustomed to the farmland, and they led a very simple life, but they were very famous for their artistic activities and the patterns and other things such as the potteries, the textiles and other things, which were very much popular for the contribution of the Chavin cultures. Side by sides, in the northern side of the Peru, in the South American, which was the coastlines from the Colombia to the Chiles, in the Peruvians and the Peru areas, the northern sides, there was another culture actually established, and it was the Nazca. The Nazca were actually very dry place facing, and there was a crisis of water. They made the use irrigations to transfer the water from the rivers to make their cultivations and for their harvestings. The water was a very important thing for them, and they actually built great civilizations, and they made the plazas, they made the pyramid shapes buildings, and their cultures were so enriched, and they led very good lives, and their areas were so developed at the times, and they built a great history in the South American history. And the Nazca actually were famous for their extraordinary working on the hilly areas. There were the lines which were called the Nazca lines, and the Nazca people were actually belief of the gods of Yark, and they were actually facing the terrible situation and the crisis of the water. That's why they might have been drawn such a type of lines. those some of the lines were actually so high top of the hills that you have to see it from the sky. And probably the Nazca people also believed in the sky gods, and that's why they worshipped and they built these lines. These lines had the shape of the spider and also the hummingbirds, which were very important, as might be were worshipped by the Nazca peoples, and Nazca culture were established, and they were very famous for their artistic designs, and different kind of stones were engravings, and the stones were engraved so fine way that was very attractive. And another way is the Nazcas were finding a fantastic way to give the water to these farmlands, and they use these lines. And they also very experts in making the potteries, and also there were also the women especially weaving the clothes, and the male person working the fields, and the musicians actually were the playing flutes, and there was a great culture, and there were customs to different kinds of foods, especially the seafoods, and sometimes in the lands areas some animals were also been killed for using as their foods. Later, what I actually would like to discuss about the Moche. The Moche culture was also very famous, and they are very lucky that their civilization was built very near to the coastal areas, and there were the proper irrigations and the proper water for their farmings, and they lead a fantastic lives, very happy lives. And at the times they planted many crops like the maize and the squash and the other edible plants, which were very important for their foods, and sea fishes and other meats were available for them. And the Moche built their fantastic buildings such as the pyramid like buildings, plazas, and there when they uncovered the monuments, especially the graveyards, there were so fantastic way been built, which is really surprised the scientist and the researcher or the archaeologist. But the fall of the Moche, how did it happen? It is remained quite mystery, because it is still not to be found how they were actually abolished or become this huge civilization fall. So that was the wonderful story. So in this way actually we find a fantastic description of the South American culture and history. So from the very beginning, and last video I have talked about the Olmec civilizations, later I talked about the Japotecs, and later today I already discussed about the Chavin culture, and also the Nazcas, and also the Moche. So thank you very much those who are watching my videos. It's my special request, if you want to know more about the world history, please subscribe my channel through some comments, and stay with us. Thank you.